Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Fighting the Envelope podcast, where we push the envelope and fight the current. I am one half of the podcast, Brandon Williams, and the other half is...
That one homie, Cameron Sprague.
So, like we did last time, let's go ahead and start off this specific podcast where Jinja Ninja over here and I will be discussing the two debates of the prior 2 weeks and how it will affect our state of democracy in the upcoming 10 years of our young existential lives. We're going to talk about
sophomore albums. Don't listen to him. We don't want to talk about the debate here. Let's just keep it
you're right. You know what? No one wants to talk about the presidential debates.
Nobody cares about that.
Why don't we just go ahead and talk about what this week's going to be about, which is our favorite sophomore albums.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's get into the list.
Oh, yeah. So I guess to start off our list, so we don't sound like Watch Slow Joe, we should go ahead and make our honorable mentions, just throw them right off the bat.
And if you didn't watch our episode that we made 2 weeks ago, first off, you should go watch it. And then secondly, Brandon goes for a more influential approach where I just go for my personal favorites. So don't take either of our lists too seriously. We're not trying to compete. We're just trying to throw some dope sophomore albums out there,
And push the envelope and fight the current.
Exactly. With our controversial picks,
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't eat us alive.
Yeah. So my first pick for honorable mention goes to Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. It's my personal favorite Neil Young album. It's very poetic and it has his rock sound to it. And him and his band Crazy Horse, they go hard in this album. My next pick will go for Bright and Later, which is by Nick Drake. Very melodic, haunting singer. He isn't necessarily unknown, but he's unknown. It's like if you know who he is, then you know who he is. But if you don't, then you should just go ahead and give him a try. He's one of the best examples of a dude who can just play guitar and sing as poetic as possible and not look like a pretentious douchebag when he does it. And along with that, another amazing singer and songwriter, we have Astral Weeks by Van Morrison, who, as Cameron knows, is an Irish gift sent from the heavens, and his singing is just holy. And my last pick for my honorable mentions will be Paranoid by Black Sabbath, which is one of the best metal albums of all time, and along with a few other examples, really kicked the genre off into what it became, a perfect genre of only perfection. Iron Man, as we know, that's another thing that goes hard. I think a problem that we might have had with our last list is how maybe we didn't add Black Sabbath's debut, but we're making it up by having Paranoid, and at least in our honorable mentions this time around.
I don't necessarily agree. I was listening to Black Sabbath's debut when considering, and I don't think that I regret leaving it off. But I agree that the sophomore album should definitely be at least mentioned, and that's why I also have Paranoid in my honorable mentions. This album's still played, very heavily to this day. Paranoid, the self-titled track, War Pigs, and like you said, Iron Man are still, just played, bops all over the modern day radio. To also keep the metal feeling, almost spoiled my next honorable mention. I also picked Metallica's sophomore album, Ride the Lightning. I could see myself in the future regret not putting this on my actual list because this album is absolutely amazing. It's a really good metal album. I mean, For Whom the Bell Tolls alone is like one of the greatest metal songs of all time, and I'll stand by that. I don't have a lot of rock or metal on my list, so I wanted to show some love in the honorable mention. So I also picked Enema by Tool. Our diehard Tool fans, which is almost every Tool fan out there, probably will be upset that this wasn't on the actual list. But, I felt like my other picks were a little bit more fun and more my style, at least right now. And then, keeping it rock, we got Pinkerton by Weezer. That's my final honorable mention. I think I said in our last episode that I kind of was surprised neither of us had mentioned Blue Album, which is my personal favorite Weezer album. But Pinkerton's also a solid one, and I at least wanted to show it some love this time. So how about we get into our actual list now, Brandon? And you start us off with your number 10 pick, which, how dare you pick this as your number 10?
Pop culturally speaking, I have to put this album on my list. And it was very hard for me to do it because it either belongs on this list or it absolutely doesn't. And it is as gateway as it gets. I mean, you can get away with the album being on the list too, but that is Nevermind by Nirvana, led by the not so popular and not amazing Kurt Cobain, who's not an icon, not an amazing singer, not a great songwriter,
Not the coolest member of the 27 Club.
not the coolest member of the 27 Club. Dave Grohl, probably the least known name in this band, didn't do much afterwards, and Krist Novoselic. It screams smells like 1991. You're yearning to get together, get your friends together and watch MTV on a Friday night and just chill with some Bud Lights. Those days are long gone, but about the album itself, it has a very solid 1, 2, 3 punch. First 3 tracks are absolutely amazing. And if you listen to this album, you'll get basically the sound of the Seattle grunge movement and alternative rock in the 1990s. And if I had to say one thing that I'm not a big fan of this album, it's the ending. I think Something in the Way would have been the much more fitting and perfect ending. But you know what? There's a reason it's on this list, and I do think it belongs. I know back in my younger and wiser years, I was this is a big band that I liked, and I actually had that cringy shirt that you buy at Kohl's, like the smiley face, and I wore it to school one time, and this chick came up and she was like, I bet you can't even name 3 Nirvana songs. So then I listed like 15 in front of her face. The last thing I will say is I think another reason it might be so low on my list is because I do give preference to Nirvana's MTV Unplugged and In Utero, but it's still a great album.
Yeah, I mean, like, personally, I would probably say In Utero's my favorite album of Nirvana, and their MTV Unplugged is probably my favorite live album of all time. But I still am kind of surprised it's so low on your list because I show this album some love a little later, not to spoil anything, but I stand by the statement that this album is the album of the 90s. And if you won't give me that, Smells Like Teen Spirit is definitely the song of the 90s.
Did you forget Criss Cross's Jump?
Or Baby Got Back? Come on. No, but yeah, this album is definitely a gateway, and I'll get a little bit more into it later on.
Actually, I don't think you will. It's not on this list.
Yeah, it's not on my list. Forget I said anything. I just don't want to talk about this album. I don't like it anymore.
Wink, wink.
Let's get on to my number 10 pick, which is a much lesser known album. It's very modern. Came out in 2017. I'm talking about Lock It by Crumb. Extremely short album. I think it's under 20 minutes. I think it's like there's only like 3 or 4 songs on this album, but it is honestly one of my most listened to albums of this year. My roommate Mark Landon, shout out, showed me the song Lock It, and it was just like it was total game changing. I like psychedelic sounding music. Like I was an avid Tame Impala fan there for like a quick month, but I definitely like Crumb's psychedelic sound a lot more than Tame Impala or Animal Collective, which I really do not like. Surprisingly, because I keep getting recommended Animal Collective, but I just can't get into them. And I think this album just slips under everyone's radar, and I think that it should definitely get a shout out, and that's why it's my number 10, because it's a really nice sounding album. I think it's very hypnotic, I think.
Yeah, it does kind of have that Animal Collective and Tame Impala sound. Basically, the whole album sounds like you're listening to that one song, The More I Know, The Worse. No, but he's right. It does have a very underground indie psychedelic sound. It's a very chill album. You're just kind of laying there at night. You're trying to get to bed. You turn it on. It chills you out. It relaxes you like few albums of this day do. It's one that I didn't really like the first time I ever listened to it just because I was in the mood. But then I don't know, something hit and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, you know what album I did like the first time I heard? Your number 9 pick. How about we hear that?
So for my number 9 pick, we have Good Kid, Mad City.
It's not a sophomore album.
Technically,
it's not a sophomore album.
We're going in technicalities here. It's his sophomore studio album, which, again, I'm a very technical person. That's why it's on the list. But yeah, Good Kid, Mad City, released in October 22nd of 2012 by our man Kendrick Lamar. Now, coming right out of the gate and just say, I think this is Kendrick's best album due to it having the same energy as To Pimp a Butterfly, showing his powerful poetic writing, the bopability factor, and by showing his true emergence as a powerful artist in a growing genre. Has a very powerful opening with Shireen, a hint of what is to come. Has a smooth transition into...
B word, don't kill my vibe.
Bat, don't kill my vibe.
Summer
One of the
Beach.
best, yeah, Beach, don't kill my vibe. One of the best songs on this album. And other ones that are definitely worth noting are Backstreet Freestyle, Art of Peer Pressure, Money Trees, Poetic Justice, all classics from this album. And then we have even another deep song like Swimming Pools. Listen, I know, Cameron. I know you're making that little gesture right now. There's a lot of songs on this album. That's why it's on this list. Yeah, Swimming Pools is a deep song. I don't think it's as superior as some of the other ones that I just mentioned above, but it is like the one song that you can just burst out while you're listening to at a party and actually become an alcoholic while listening to the song, which is warning you about alcoholism. And then at a funeral, I could see Sing About Me being a song that is played in the future, surprisingly. I think there'll be one deep person who does it, and then, from that point on, everyone plays at their funeral. I think kind of like Nirvana's what's Nirvana's album? I'm just kidding. Just like In Bloom. I was kidding. Relax. Kind of like Nirvana's In Bloom. It could use a better ending, but you know what? Just its overall vibe of having this blend of 70s and 80s funk, 80s and 90s R&B, the modern hip hop and the modern rap sound. That ending is going to get, an okay from me.
Yeah, I don't know if you were joking or not, but it was Nevermind. You said In Bloom. I'm sure you were just joking though.
Yeah, so. I was just knocking your strappers off.
This is a really good a pick. I was just giving you just some tough love there for picking it because I also have a pick that is technically not a sophomore album, so just teasing you. But this album, I wouldn't say it's my favorite Kendrick album. I would definitely put To Pimp a Butterfly, and I would even put Damn above it, which might stir the pot a little bit. But we can get into that later as well.
It might be fighting the envelope.
It might be fighting the envelope. But like you said, it's a very good album. I think this album, especially for the time that it came out, it was very kind of ahead of its time, showing what Kendrick really does. I think that Kendrick does a good mix of keeping it real and, like you said, having a bopability to his albums. This one, I think he does a little bit better in the bopability department than in To Pimp a Butterfly, but not as good as he does it in Damn, which, like I said, this might be stirring the pot, that statement right there. But I think it's a pretty solid pick. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all three, but there's no doubting that To Pimp a Butterfly, Good Kid, Mad City, and Damn, all 10 out of 10s.
Yeah. Oh, easily. I mean, Kendrick Lamar, probably one of the greatest rappers of all time, and I'll die by that.
Yeah, no,
I would put him in my personal top 3 rappers of all time. I would have to think about it a little bit more. But
I agree.
He's definitely very high on my list. Very low on my list, however, in sophomore albums. But I think a very overlooked sophomore album is Bringing Down the Horse by the Wallflowers. This album came out in 96, which I feel like it kind of has a very older sound to it. Not too old. It's kind of like a modern day Bob Dylan, which kind of makes sense because his son's in this band.
He's the lead singer.
Jacob Dylan, which this might be controversial. but I think I like Jacob Dylan and the Wallflowers a lot more than Bob Dylan because I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan fan. But it's kind of funny how I found this album. I actually found this album very recently. I was asking my uncle what his favorite debut album was just because that was the topic we were on. And he gave me this band, the Wallflowers, and told me that it was his favorite debut. So I started listening to them, and while their debut was extremely good, I didn't put it on my list just because I wasn't too, like, into it. Like, it didn't hit me as hard. But then I heard the Sophomore album. I don't know what made me listen to the Sophomore album, but it definitely got my attention, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I just started listening to this album, like, last month, and I've still listened to it, like how it's one of my most on repeat albums right now. Very good. I don't see the Wallflowers getting much love, but I hope at least mentioning it will draw some attention to them because like I said, I think they deserve a lot of love, and I think Jacob Dylan and the Wallflowers are really good.
Bringing down the horse, like your brother Johnson's pick last time. This is the diamond in your bowl of macaroni and cheese.
I've never heard that saying before, but that was amazing.
Plus, it's from the Wallflowers, which is led by, as you said, Bob Dylan's son, Jacob Dylan, which is kind of sexy, Our boy over here, Cameron, might hate Bob Dylan. Some people in this duo actually love him and might even have that artist later on in this list, but that's okay. It's fine. Really, the only time I'd ever heard of this band is from that song One Headlight, and it's just because it was on a Geico commercial. I think a dude was just like chilling on his motorcycle. Is that I really don't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but it was on a Geico commercial, and I was like, and then when I heard that song on the album, I was like, oh, that's the song, and then just kept getting better from there.
Yeah. I don't hate Bob Dylan. I just can't get into him. Like, I can understand what he's done, but we can get into that later as well. Let's get into your number 8 pick. How about that?
So, for my number 8 pick, we have Paul's Boutique, which is from 1989 by the Beastie Boys, which, again, is led by Mike D, MCA, and Ad Rock, which you would know if you listened to our last podcast. 105 officially sampled songs and counting on this album because some people think it's as high as 300, which is absolutely amazing. Some of my favorite tracks include Eggman, which as Cameron knows is a true bop. The Sound of Science, which no matter what Cameron says is probably one of the top 3 songs on the album. Johnny Royale, Hey Ladies, and Shake Your Rump are true bops if I've ever heard any. And I honestly might take the high road here. And I'm going to say that I think The Sound of Science is better than its predecessor, Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel.
Those songs don't even compare. That's just the name.
No. Like in this song, like Sound of Science, where he's like, and Isaac Newton had an apple fall on his head, and Benjamin Franklin had a kite, and Albert Einstein discovered E equals MC squared. And Mike D, Ad Rock, and MCA killed it with this song called Sound of Science.
That's definitely not how I remember that one. Yeah, another album that I will later mention on my list, so I don't want to spoil too many of my opinions on it. Absolutely amazing. It is no secret here at the Fighting the Envelope corporate that we absolutely love the Beastie Boys. We are huge fans here, and Paul's Boutique is definitely an album that needs to be mentioned. It is a sample masterpiece, but like I said, I'll get into that later. I feel like I keep saying I'm going to get into stuff later. Have you noticed that too?
Yeah, we're just ruining it for the crowd.
We're just
listening.
ruining it.
They don't even need to listen from this point on.
I'm so sorry.
I think in this limited liability company that is Fighting the Envelope, I think for some reason I still might pick License to Ill more. Actually, no.
No, I would definitely pick License to Ill over this one.
I think, what did I say last time? I think I might have accidentally said that I liked Paul's Boutique better. I think it's a very close. It's very close. You know, it's one of the great debates when you talk about albums. If I said I like this album last time, I think that might be true. I think that might ring true. That I think slightly, like a smidge, like a teaspoon of sugar,
Wow.
and it helps the medicine go down.
Wow. Helps the medicine go down. I like that. I like that. No, this album's definitely, I think, one of their most overlooked albums. It's a little less so nowadays because everyone knows how good it was. But when it came out, everyone hated this album. But it took a little bit of time before there was a cult following of this album, and it really is a really good one.
You know, if it makes you feel any better, my number one was not a very well liked album either. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah. Well, no.
Let's just go ahead and say my number one.
Let's just my 8, my 7, my let's just go through all of them real quick. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Paul's Boutique later. My number 8 pick is, probably a surprising one. A lot of people would say that this does not deserve a spot on best sophomore albums, and I agree. It's not a best sophomore album, but this album holds a dear place in my heart. It is "You've Come a Long Way, Baby" by the fat boy known as Slim. It came out in '98. It wasn't really stirring the pot big in the electronica scene, but I think that this album used to make up most of my iPod Nano. I had Right Here, Right Now, Rockefeller Skank, Praise You. I don't know why I'm blanking so hard.
Taylor Swift's debut.
Taylor Swift's debut was also on my iPod Nano. Fat Boy, I'm not trying to say Fat Boy's my favorite electronic artist. I would definitely give that to like the Chemical Brothers, or even Daft Punk. I like them definitely a little bit more than Fat Boy. But like I said, this album has a very, very close spot in my heart, especially the songs. I re-listened to this album just because I was just curious. I don't remember. I think I was listening to the Rockefeller Skank, and I was like, I wonder what this entire album sounds like. And I started listening to it, and at first I was a little like on the fence about it, but the more I listened to it, it's probably going to be one of my most listened to albums of 2020. Just because I think it's a very good album to just put over while you're like running or you're doing something like doing schoolwork, or because it's not very technologically like impressive. Like Fat Boy is pretty repetitive, and he's known for his repetition, but I feel like he finds some catchy hooks to repeat, and I just get hyped when I'm hearing like California or Build It Up, Tear It Down, or my personal favorite song on the album, You're Not From Brighton, or Love Island. Like, I just love a lot of the songs on here. I don't know why, but I really do.
If we can kind of go back to your pick prior to this and talk about Bringing Down the Horse, that would be really cool. I'm just kidding. No, this is like my least favorite like pick of yours, and I'll just say it straight to your face. I hated this album. It's like a very experimental hip hop album that it just sounds like you popped in your VHS and all you're getting is a loop of samples, like song samples used in the 2002 trailer for the worst action movie coming in 2003. His voice, he just keeps saying the same thing over and over again, but he increases and increases his volume with beats behind it. It's like, what's an example? Like he's like, or it's like Fat Boy Slim just keeps repeating the same stuff and saying it again, and Fat Boy Slim keeps repeating the same stuff again, and Fat Boy Slim keeps repeating the same stuff again, and then he gets really loud, and then Fat Boy Slim just repeating the stuff and getting louder, and Fat Boy's just repeating the same stuff and getting louder.
Well, I think you kind of have to. I'm not too educated on the electronica scene. Like I said, I listened to like the Chemical Brothers debut, and I think it's way more advanced than this album. But if you listen to like Daft Punk's early stuff, a lot of their stuff's pretty repetitive too. I'm talking about around the world, around the world, around it. It was kind of like the thing going on in the electronica genre, especially like in the late 90s. People were not like used to this sound. Everyone was used to like people doing it, like hands-on instruments and everything. But Fat Boy and other artists were really like just jumping on their big old Mac computers that they had at the time and just pushing the sounds as much as they could.
Mac computers?
Isn't that what they were? The box, the giant box.
Oh, the box they had. I thought you were talking about, okay, you said computer. I was definitely picturing like a laptop. I was like,
no, they didn't have
wrong.
laptops back then.
Wrong.
You're wrong.
You rang.
At least you didn't interrupt me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this album. I think it's a fun one. If you haven't listened to it, I definitely would check it out.
All right. Another very fun one to check out on my list is The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest from 1991. This album is a very beautiful mix of rap and jazz and rap and spoken word. Think of A Tribe Called Quest like the Steely Dan of rap and hip hop. Honestly, the only reason I even put this album on my list in the first place is just because of the cover. It's like kind of picking your favorite like NFL team based off their jersey. That's kind of the only reason it's on my list. Or it could be because of amazing tracks such as Check the Rhymes, Excursions, Bugging Out, and Scenario. There's definitely a clear influence on a lot of the albums that come after this in the genre, and how amazing it fuses all these genres together. I think it's done very well. I know that might be either a popular or unpopular opinion. It's another very debatable topic.
I don't know what the popular opinion on A Tribe is, but I think that this album sounds a little too much like Sugar Hill Gang for me to like it. When I was listening to it, especially it coming out in 91, that was like the political era of hip hop. You had, NWA causing,
Public Enemy.
Yeah, just causing the biggest scene over on the West Side. And it might just be the East Coast sound at the time, but I think that it sounds too much like the disco hip hop, like the early 80s sound that was like Sugar Hill Gang, like I said, or Grandmaster Flash, and I think I just could not get into it.
I think you're wrong. I think it's very distinct to itself.
And I've really tried. This was the only album that I listened to twice on your list that I hadn't heard before, and I really tried to like it, but the second time I couldn't finish it, and I don't know what it is, but maybe it's like my taste for Bob Dylan. I just can't seem to find it. Maybe it'll come to me later, but I think that they sound too much like that sound that people were already hearing. I mean, if you compare it to the time, like we've said, late 80s, you had Run DMC, you had the Beastie Boys, and I don't think that they sound anything like them. I think that they sound a lot older. And I was kind of surprised to hear that this album came out the same year that amazing Gateway album, Nevermind, came out. I think that it was kind of stuck in the early 80s is what I think.
I wonder if anyone, like at house parties in the 90s, or you used to hop into a frat house, like if like 1 minute you'd be playing like The Low End Theory, and then the next minute you'd be playing Nevermind. Do you think that's what the
Dude,
90s
that is
was?
definitely what the 90s was. I wish I could have grown up in the 90s. I feel like that would have been a party. But, yeah.
Well, Mr. Original Pants over here, he's going to hit you with an original pick that he has on his list.
Okay, like I said, this album was going to come back, and it is Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. As I've mentioned, it is a sampling masterpiece. Like you said, it has maybe up to over 300 sampled pieces, which I would like to mention is, I don't know if it is the most sampled album, but it's definitely up there for most sampled album. The thing about this album was it was completely different than License to Ill, and it still is completely different. Not to say that it changed or anything, but a lot of people did not like it because everyone wanted a License to Ill too, and instead they got this album. And once people got over the fact that it wasn't, it was well loved. But when it first came out, it was poorly received, and I feel like the Beastie Boys really didn't care, because if you look at how this album came to be, they left Def Jam Records like almost right after License to Ill, and they went off and did their own thing after everyone was telling them, you need to keep to your sound, you need to keep to your sound. And the Beastie Boys weren't alien to this idea, because like I said in our previous episode, they switched. They had a somewhat successful going rock band, punk rock band going on, and then they completely dropped that and made a hip-hop group that had a punk rock sound to it. So the Beastie Boys are definitely ones to, fight the envelope and push the current. So I think it's only fitting that we show them as much love as we do.
Yeah, you actually beat me to it. I was actually about to say that I think the reason that we both featured License to Ill and Paul's Boutique on both of our lists in our first 2 episodes is because these dudes were not afraid to push the envelope and fight the current. Like, they just weren't.
They're definitely, just geniuses in their own right, which is so funny because I think you listen to the lyrics and they're just so goofy. Like, I remember Shake Your Rump. It's, I got more rhymes than mangoes in Jamaica or something like that. And it's like, what did he just say?
Yeah. I guess if I did want to hear like an artist kind of repeat himself over again, I think, Beastie Boys kind of did it with Johnny Ryall.
Which I would like to say, I think Eggman, Johnny Ryall, Shake Your Rump, and Hey Ladies are all better than
The Sound of Science.
Yeah, The Sound of Science. I definitely was a little surprised you said that was your favorite song. I was like, really? But Eggman might be my favorite one.
All right, you know what? To each their own, as they say, but Cameron's wrong.
Yeah, well, we can discuss that on our break that we're about to take. We'll be back in just a couple seconds.
2, 1.
And welcome back. We are getting on to Brandon's number 6 pick.
So my number 6 pick is actually
not very fun.
Well, it's from 2006, I think. It's Funhouse by the artist Pink.
What?
Or the Stooges. This is a kick butt punk album, and I think I like it better than both their debut and Raw Power. It's my favorite. It definitely is like it's the angstiest sounding of the 3, and that's just what makes it so beautiful. And along with the beauty you find from the angst, like what you can do is when you're listening to this album, I recommend that you just find some glass and just find a bunch of stuff to break and just throw it against the wall, because that's what this album is going to make you want to do. You'll probably do that to songs like Down on the Street, Loose, TVI, 1970s, honestly, or 1970. Honestly, though, any of the tracks you could do that too. So that's why it makes my number 6.
I don't know if I'm just burnt out on rock or what, but this album just did not hit me like I thought it was going to. When I was first listening to it, I was like, okay, and then, just kind of burnt out by the end. And it's not that long of an album, actually. Is it? How many tracks is it? It's not too long.
It's like 30-something minutes.
Yeah, it's a very short album, and I think that if you are wanting to get into like a good rock album, I think that this one is for you. And I'm not going to say it's a bad album or anything. I think I'm just burnt out on the genre a little bit myself.
Yeah, if you think this is a bad album, don't catch me in a dark alley at 2 at night, or you're gonna come across these hands and you're not gonna like it.
My feelings for this album weren't as strong as like my feelings were for the Low End Theory or anything. Like I can acknowledge it's a good punk rock album, and I think I totally agree with you. I definitely like the angst of it, and I like the feeling of wanting to break stuff. But it was just like kind of a bland taste. Not because it's a bad album, just because that's not the sound that I'm looking for right now, I think, personally. If that makes sense.
No, not at all. It didn't make any sense.
That didn't make any sense. Okay. Well, that's fine, because I got plenty of angst with my number 6 pick.
And this is another Mr. Original Pants pick.
I'm talking about that Nevermind by Nirvana.
You mean In Bloom?
In Bloom by Nirvana. There you go. It's kind of hard to go off of what I just said and then praise this album when I say I'm burnt out on the genre. But this album just, again, holds a very special place in my heart. It was a gateway album. Again, one of the very few first albums that I could listen to from start to finish. And I was a huge Nirvana fan. I know you were too. So I definitely just was eating up all the Nirvana songs that I could get into. And I actually really liked, all three of their albums. I think they had some pretty good albums. And I don't know if you listened to, they were working on their fourth album. I don't know if you listened to any of the songs from there. And I think they were pretty good. But Nevermind just hit a little differently. I think because of how successful it was, it definitely has songs that are still being, played to this day. A lot of songs, a lot of the Nirvana like go-to songs, like "In Bloom," the self-titled track, "Smells Like Teen Spirit,"
The song of the 90s.
Yeah, the song that I will stand by that. I don't care what anyone says. That is the song of the 90s. That is definitely the song that jump-started MTV and made MTV the big old, because it was wrong. That is not wrong.
No, MTV was killing it in the 80s.
I don't care what MTV was doing. I'm saying that "Smells Like Teen Spirit" brought a whole new freaking set of eyes to it, and it was being constantly played all through the 90s. What was I on about? I don't even.
You're talking about songs on the
album. Breed, Lithium, Polly, Come As You Are, all really good picks and or good songs, and I think that this album just has it all. I think I agree with you that the ending is a little weak. Something in the Way definitely should have been, that creepy like goodbye, but I still love this album. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
So in case you haven't understood what Cameron and I have been doing, we've been joking a little bit. Like when I said earlier that Kurt Cobain is not an icon, that might be debatable because he's probably one of the biggest icons of the 90s. Yeah, it just sucks that his life ended so short before we could get to what probably would have been an amazing fourth album before Courtney Love killed Kurt Cobain.
I hate Courtney Love.
I like her as a singer. But she seems trashy.
I don't even like her as a singer. I genuinely think that she did that because Dave Grohl does not like her. And Dave Grohl likes everybody. Dave Grohl's one of the most genuine dudes ever, and he does not like Courtney Love.
Yeah, he made this video like a few weeks ago, and also I was just joking earlier. He's also a big name. He ended up starting this little band called the Beatles.
The Beatles
or Foo Fighters. And there was like a video of him like. He was like playing drums, like kind of was like a drum off with this like very young like drum prodigy. He seems like a dude that you could just get coffee with and just relax.
Yeah. I think it was pretty impressive that Dave Grohl was the cover baby of this album, and then like he was just so inspired by Jimi Hendrix that he made Imagine Dragons.
Oh. I was gonna say that's definitely not him on the album, but. But let's also just mention that's an iconic album cover. I mean, when you think of iconic album covers, like that's it.
Oh yeah.
The subject material, questionable, but it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be pushing the envelope.
I feel like everybody remembers the first time they saw that album cover. I don't know about you, but I was in my good friend at the time's bedroom, and he had a poster of it, and I was only like 12 or 13, so we were joking about how, like, inappropriate that was, and we didn't want to look at it because you could see a little baby ding dong.
Yeah, if anyone happens to know, and they can go ahead and put this on the comment section or on our DMs or something, but how did that baby not like drown? That's an awkward angle. That baby like definitely like suffocated and drowned. Clearly it didn't, because like you'll go on Google sometimes, one of those random ads will be like, oh, guess what the kid from Nevermind looks like today.
Yeah. Well, not to hang on this too late. Let's get on to your fifth pick.
I see what he did there, because my next pick's Late Registration. Yeah. So released in 2005 by, we don't even have to say it, The Weeknd.
The Weeknd.
No, just kidding. No, but it's released by Fetty Wap.
Fetty Wap.
Okay, no. This time I'm serious. Yeezus, which is the real answer.
I definitely didn't think you were about to be serious.
I think, man, why are there so many hard decisions you have to make in life? Especially as we reach adulthood. Same as like the Paul's Boutique and Licensed to Ill debate. This is another, it's like College Dropout or Late Registration or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. If I had to pick, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy would be first, but out of those two, I'd probably...
Jesus is King.
I'd pick Jesus is King or College Dropout over it. I'm the type of person who's usually driving. I'm a very busy man. So drive slow. especially if I'm going down the interstate. That's the song I listen to just because it chills you out. It makes you go about 15 notches slower. Then if I need to be somewhere like really quick, I just play Touch the Sky. If I need a good jam song, Diamonds from Sierra Leone's a classic. Hey Mama is great for Mother's Day. And Roses is just another just beautiful, noteworthy song. However, maybe why I might put this a little bit lower is because like everyone, they don't even think of the titles I just said. You know what they're thinking of? Gold Digger. They're thinking of Heard 'Em Say. And you know what I say? I say no. Absolutely not. Like they're great. They really are, but they're not as great as some of the other ones. And honestly, I hate Heard 'Em Say because it was plagued by Adam Levine. That's a disease that's worse than COVID-19 if you think about it.
I think Gold Digger's like one of the most overplayed songs of the 2000s too. So I agree with you. I also agree that I think I'd pick College Dropout, and I'm sure that's why that late registration didn't make it up one more, like College Dropout did. But it's a solid pick. I think I overlooked this album more than I should have. But when I saw it on your list, I definitely went back and listened to it, and I give it a little bit more love now because of it. I think that like you said, it has so many really good songs on it, and Yeezus is just one of the greatest hip hop artists of all time, maybe even the greatest, and he definitely hits the nail on the head with this album. I think it's a good one, especially following up the success that College Dropout was.
I love how you just did that because, as a matter of fact, we're going to go into your number 5 because you said hitting it with the nail with your number 5 pick.
Downward Spiral by the 9 Inch Nails. I said earlier in my honorable mentions that there wasn't many metal or rock picks on this list, but I just listed 2 of the biggest albums I think that are in the metal or rock genre, and I think Downward Spiral is going to be cited as one of the most influential albums of metal. Maybe not of all time, but I think that this album definitely maybe not paved the way, but it definitely kind of like made the whole very industrial, dark sound a little bit more popular. I think, like we were saying during the book break, I think Closer was. I read somewhere that it was being played at clubs with like Madonna and like the poppy songs like Closer. And I don't know if you haven't heard that song, but it definitely doesn't sound like a song you would want to be dancing to at the club too. I think that's really funny. But I think the depiction that Trent Reznor does of a man that just goes down this downward spiral that tackles like his belief of his like religion, like he fails to accept, like he calls God dead and everything, and then he like turns to drugs and he turns to like mindless sex and everything, and then he just goes down this downward spiral and ends up, in my personal interpretation, he like ends it, because I think like if you listen to the self-titled track Downward Spiral, it's a very creepy, like sad acoustic song. Like it's like just like it kind of goes off of the guitar lick that's at the end of Closer, and it makes like a whole song out of it, and then Hurt comes on, and it's just like this dude that's just finally done with everything, and I think it's like so sad and so like moving in a way. Like it just is like very depressing, and if you ever just want to feel absolutely just sad as hell, you listen to this album. Pardon my French there, but just love the very raw and industrial sound, and I think that they do it a little bit better than Tool did at the time, and I'm not afraid to say it. I like this album more than Tool's Enema, which they came out around the same time, I'm pretty sure. And yeah,
it's a really hard album to like. It's good, it really is. It is a good album. It's a little bit too depressing for my likings. I don't know. It just, for me, it kind of sounds like he just grabbed like a quarter and a nickel and a penny, and he just kind of rubbed them together and just sang like in a very graspy voice. Maybe that is because he's hurt. I think if I had to pick a good cover, I'm gonna say it. Johnny Cash's version is much better.
Whoa.
I'm a country boy. I come from Liberty Township, Ohio, the most country place in the world.
Look, I would have agreed with you way back when. But the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. I mean, you kind of have to look at what inspired this album. You know the album that inspired this one that is like quoted as the inspiration for this album.
And the much, much better album, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree with you, but
Dark Side of the Moon.
The Dark Side of the Moon.
or the Wall.
It was one of those two.
Yeah.
Or 36 Chambers.
Yeah. Or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. All were inspired by this. But the Wall is the clear influence.
Oh yeah, no. Trent goes and says very certain that, or he definitely acknowledges that the Wall was his inspiration, and I would agree that the Wall did it better, but I still think that this is a much more raw sound than the Wall. It was less, like, not as well produced and as theatrical as the Wall, and that's what I like about it. I think it's a lot more real, and it doesn't try to like play it up as, like this like thought. It's this dude that is literally going down this downward spiral, and that's what I like about it.
So deep.
But yeah,
I like people who push currents. I really do. And this dude could probably be a surfer. He has the body to do it, at least in his younger age, before he looked like absolute garbage. And if you listen to our last podcast, I was talking about Jimi Hendrix, as Cameron would call it, the coolest person of the 27 club. But yeah, that's Jimi Hendrix, and his album Acts as Bold as Love. It kind of almost cements him as the Greek god of the guitar mountains.
The Greek god of the guitar mountains.
While Are You Experience is more influential and probably the better album, this album is almost equally as good and is equally to die for. It demonstrates what we mean when we say that Jimi Hendrix is a Gucci god from Guitar Center World. Amazing tracks such as Little Wing, Castles Made of Sand, If 6 Was 9, Spanish Castle Magic, and Bold as Love are just mwah, like we're eating at a French dining restaurant, or the complete opposite, or we're just at a grunge cafe and it comes on,
I know, I guess. I'm not as familiar with this album as I am with Are You Experienced? When I did listen to it, I can definitely, like I said, appreciate it, but I definitely agree that Are You Experienced is more my favorite album, and definitely, I think, more influential. At least cited as more influential. I don't see as many people talking about this album, but it's still a really good one, and I'm sure that's why it's a little lower on your list than Are You Experienced. But still a good album. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. Jimi Hendrix, rest in peace, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And this album, yeah, totally kicks ass. I agree. I don't have much more to say. Sorry.
So to go on to my number 4 pick of an album that kicks butt, we're going with Money Store by Death Grips.
Whoa. That was my pick. I don't know what you're on.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right.
You want to talk about controversial albums. This album, I think, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I think this album is the Eric Andre show of music. It was so out of nowhere. 2012, MC Ride comes out of nowhere with this extremely abstract sound, and I think almost everybody I've at least talked to says that they hated this album the first time they heard it. They were like, I don't know how you can listen to this. But then it happens, you become woke, and you just listen to this album nonstop for a few months at least. I still listen to this album. It's definitely a little bit harder to listen to. One of my hardest albums to listen to on my list. But the samples and the uneven sounds of the songs, like, they're just very, like, all over the place. Like, it doesn't feel like there's any structure. They're hard to get into. But when you do, it's just totally game-changing. MC Ride is also pretty freaking scary. I don't know if you've ever seen. Do you know who MC Ride is? Have you seen that dude?
I have not, no.
Oh, I have to show you a video of him. He is pretty out there.
You don't want to find him in an alley at 2
You do not want to find him. You know who is actually a really big fan of Death Grips?
Who is, sweetie?
Robert Pattinson. Like, wow. A huge fan. Like, look it up. He's like a diehard fan of Death Grips.
You're talking about Edward himself.
Yeah,
Or is it Edward?
Yeah.
Okay,
Edward.
sorry, sometimes I mix them up.
Edward, the Batman, like.
Yeah, that's what he's known for. No, he has a lot of, very quick side note, and because that wasn't at all mentioned that. You've never said that, but honestly, let's talk about Robert Pattinson for 2 seconds. He's going to be an actor that's going to emerge as one of the best in like the more indie, not necessarily low budget, but like the A24 sound or A24 type of movies. Robert Pattinson's definitely going to be one of the futures. I know with Twilight, we thought he was going to be over, but he's made a name for himself in these like very obscure roles.
Shout out to Robert Pattinson.
Shout out to Robert Pattinson.
You don't, but you don't get what I'm saying when I say it's like the Eric Andre show of music.
No, I don't.
I think so because like you look at what the Eric Andre show did. He was like very unknown and he was bringing this very like random new taste of comedy to the scene. And when he first came on, he was the only person that was really doing it, at least the way that he was doing it. And not as many people appreciated or liked it. And a lot of people appreciated this album, I think, when it first came out. And it's cited as one of the greatest albums of the 2010s. I think that it would be right under To Pimp a Butterfly for me personally as my number 2 pick, believe it or not. I know you're giving me the eyes, but I I absolutely love this album. And if you look at it, the noise genre that I was praising last episode with 100 Gex really didn't blow up until after this album, I think, personally. At least into, like, the mainstream where a lot of people were loving it like they do now.
I'll say it. I'm going to say it. Money Store isn't a sophomore album. They had an EP before this, then a debut album.
Wait. No, this album's their second.
I don't think it is. I will
take that to my grave.
Dude, I would take it to my grave because
You're thinking of my number 2 pick, I think.
I don't think so, bro. I did the research, bro.
You want to fight, guy?
I did the research. Oh,
I did the research.
All right, audience. So we're gonna see. I could be wrong. This definitely is more your genre type of music, but I think I looked and yeah, it's their what was that? Their debut studio album?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
That's bull.
Well,
they had what's the other one called? I don't remember.
I think they had an EP before this, which is what you were thinking. But like, the Money Store, it's not a soft.
It is. I don't care what you say.
Let's see, so look at that, studio albums, huh? Look at that.
I don't care what you say. It's their sophomore. It's their sophomore.
They had Death Grips, which is their EP. But EP and studios aren't the same. They aren't the same thing.
It's their sophomore project, and I'm changing the name of this list. It's now Sophomore Projects, and Money Store is a sophomore project. Get out of here.
Okay, no matter what it is.
What are EPs anyways? Aren't they? I thought those were just smaller albums, just like to give you a taste.
Exactly, but I'm a technical man. I'm a technical man.
Then what do you mean? Yeah.
I'm a technical man.
Sophomore albums. We're not saying sophomore studio albums. An EP's an album. I don't care what you say.
No, I don't care what you say. But
honestly, argue about it in the comments.
We'll argue about it in the comments. I can get on board with this repetitiveness over Fatboy Slim's repetitiveness. If I were in a club, I'd be a bit more okay with it than just being a regular audience listener. However, I could listen to Hacker any day of the week. Hacker, that is probably one of the just coolest endings to an album of like the past 15 years. That is just like a bop of an ending. It honestly makes up for the rest of the album being mediocre outside of a club context.
I mean, that's fair, but I don't see this album being played in like a club. Like I feel like it'd be kind of like too intense. You should look up, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you definitely haven't, but look up Death Grips live. It goes, I don't know the name of the other two. It's a trio, and I don't know the name of the other two because they have MC Ride, and then they have a drummer, and then they have like a sampler or whatever they're called, like the DJ dude. But they go hard. Like I don't see them being played at clubs or anything. They definitely.
Again, this is more your department, so I'll take your word for it. And I'll have to give them more of a try. It's just I was playing basketball, relaxing, all cool, and then I was listening to the album, and I was like, maybe for a basketball standpoint, it just wasn't. Like
Basketball, you wouldn't shoot hoops to this album.
You know what's a good shoot hoops to album though?
No,
My number 3 pick.
Don't say it.
The Free Will and Bob Dylan, which is written by the artist Neil Young. No, but it's actually from Tyga. Okay, it's from Bob Dylan. Leave me alone. It's from 1963, and I don't think it's like Bob Dylan's best album, but it's probably the most him-sounding album to listen to. It's weird that I have this so high, but like when I was doing the math, I was typing in an algorithm into my computer. I did put it at the 3 spot, or I did put it at my number 3 sophomore spot, but I'd say it's my 5th favorite of his overall. But it is a very smooth and influential album to listen to. Because without this album, there really isn't and I air quote, Bob Dylan, air quote. Don't Think Twice, It's Alright is probably one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Blown in the Wind, and Masters of War are all well crafted as well. And you know what? I think I don't know if it's a perfect album, but it's the same way it's like it's weird because it's a perfect album, but at the same time it's not. But it's him. It's Bob Dylan.
I don't got a lot to say because like I said, I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan. I can acknowledge what he's done, and I can acknowledge that he's been such an influence, but his sound I just absolutely do not like. I think it's just too bare bones for me. Like it's just, and I think that's the appeal of Bob Dylan, but I don't know.
Bare bones?
Yeah, I feel like he just doesn't, like, it's not like produced like too grandly, like.
Well, it is from 1963, and it does come out.
Well,
of,
like I feel like.
And it does come out of a very New York City folk scene. I mean, what are you expecting? Death Grips? Are you expecting?
That's what I was expecting. I was expecting Bob Dylan to jumpstart.
Dude, abstract lyrics talking about the craziness of the early 60s and the civil rights movement, and eventually kind of foreshadows what would come at the end of the 60s, and kind of he kept pushing the envelope and fighting the current.
I am not saying he didn't. Like, I know that he was a big... No, I'm not saying that at all. I was just saying I don't like his sound. And I'm sorry that hurts your feelings, but...
No, it not only does it hurt my feelings, I would literally think that you should be, like, whacked over the head with a baseball bat because of that opinion.
You know, it is a well-produced album, though. Atlians by Outkast, or also known as my third pick. My number 3 pick, not my third pick. 1996, Outkast, Atlians, sophomore album, absolutely amazing. I think that this is probably one of their most hip-hop sounding albums, and when I say that, I mean like it just sounds like kind of like what the West Coast was doing at the time, where it was very danceable. I think this album is very danceable, and not that Aquemini or Stankonia or Speaker Box and The Love Is Below. I don't think that, I'm not trying to say that those aren't danceable albums, but I think that this, like, if you were a hip-hop enthusiast, I don't remember who said this, definitely I think it was Millenhead. I think the Millenhead said this. I think he said hip-hop enthusiasts would definitely praise this album a little bit more than, like, their Stankonia or Aquemini. And I agree with that. I think that while this isn't my favorite Outkast album, I think that this is one of my top 3 hip-hop albums, in my opinion. I think that it's, very boppable, but also has some really, down-to-earth lyrics like The Chronic or Damn by Kendrick Lamar. Those are probably my favorite, like, hip-hop sounding deep albums, I think. And the first 4 songs on this album, Two Dope Boys in a Cadillac, the self-titled track, Wheels of Steel, and J-Bell. I think J-Bell's the 4th one, if I'm not mistaken. And then Elevators. I'm not the biggest fan of Elevators. But the first 4, I would say are definitely easily my top 10 Outkast songs.
Aliens. Classic Outkast album. You know what? Outkast, criminally underrated. So criminally underrated that you should be thrown in jail if you don't appreciate Outkast. And while I would pick Aquemini as my like favorite Outkast album. This is again a very close second. The album produced probably my favorite song of theirs, Atlians and Elevators, Me and You and Your Mama Too. The album cover is really cool.
Yeah.
Like probably one of the coolest like hip hop album covers. I love that like late '90s like
Comic book-esque, you know, like it looks, yeah.
you get it.
I
But no, they're very influential, and basically Cameron hit on basically everything that I would say. You should definitely go and listen to this album if you want like what it really means to be a hip hop lover.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Outkast is like criminally underrated. I think that there's a big audience out there that does appreciate Outkast, a very big one. But I think like at least to like a lot of people, they know Outkast for Hey Ya and Miss Jackson.
That's the problem, though. That's the problem. That's the issue. That's like the trailer trash for Van Halen, you know?
Well, like that's how I got into Outkast. I didn't listen to them really all that much, and then people just kept recommending them to me. And I actually think I heard The Way You Move on the radio, and that's when I was like, I need to listen to Outkast. Even though that's not even like, I would not put Speaker Box or the Love Is Below in my top three. Like Aquemini, Atlians, and Stankonia are my top three definitely. But I still think it's a very solid, you know, album. I'm kind of losing myself. What was I talking about? I'm a little distracted now. I was talking about the Love Is Below, or the Speaker Box. I don't think Outkast. You know? Did you know that album's the highest selling hip hop album of all time?
There's no way.
It is. Look it up. I swear. It's the Love Is Below and Speaker Box, or Speaker Box and the Love Is Below. The double album is the highest selling hip hop album of all time.
Yeah,
and it's
we'll
considered,
see about that. We'll see.
And
about
it's considered their worst album. Not their worst, but one of their weaker projects. You can definitely see like the divide. We're gonna have to have an Outkast podcast. Yeah, I know.
Wow, 11.4 million.
Yeah,
wow,
I told you.
Wow. Okay.
I was blown away by that. But this album, bringing it back, trying not to get off too far off topic.
No, let's get off topic for 0.2 seconds. I'm going down this list. The source that I'm on says that MC Hammer's "Please Hammer Don't Hurt Even" or "Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him" is the 5th selling hip hop album of all time. Dude, where are my socks? They're just like, whew. I think they're at that house over there.
Dude, how could we forget to mention MC Hammer, bro?
Oh yeah, it's like you can't touch this.
You can't touch MC Hammer. Trying not to get too off topic. This album's a good album. Outkast is awesome. Don't think they're criminally underrated. I think the South Side is poorly represented by Outkast because I think Outkast set the bar way too high. I tried listening to like other South Side or South Coast music, and I just can't get into it like I could with Outkast. So
the last thing I'll say is Atlanta definitely is not on the coast. Not even remote. It's like in the middle of the
I know. I did not mean to say coast. I was just thinking West Coast and East Coast, but
yeah,
South Side. Sorry, South Side. I think we're gonna take a minute, not to interrupt right before the second pick, but we're gonna take just a quick little break here. And we're back with our number 2 and then our number 1 picks. Sorry to cut it off in a weird time. I feel like number 2 and 3 would be a weird, like little split. Don't you feel?
No. That's why I wanted to split it there because
you don't want to be like watch Slow Joe.
I don't want to be. I just want to be someone like. I like not being normal. I like being avant-garde, and by us changing where we pause, we're changing the world.
We're gonna. We're gonna start a revolution from
and to get 3 or 1 to 2. No.
All right, let's hear your number 2 pick.
Tapestry. And I'm not talking about the stuff you put on your walls. I'm talking about the album, 1971, from one of the best female songwriters of all time, Carole Queen.
Whoa.
King, okay, Carole King.
There you go.
Honestly, it's probably one of the most female empowering albums of all time. And honestly, when you listen to it as a male, you essentially become an empowered woman yourself. In regard to female solo albums, this or Joni Blue has that effect on you. They're just both just they transcend you into another world. So Far Away, It's Too Late, You've Got a Friend, Will You Love Me Tomorrow, You Make the Earth Move, and You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, which is a great cover of Aretha Franklin's version of that song. Just hard to die for. I think you're a Family Guy man yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, more South Park than Family Guy, but sure.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50 for me. It really depends on the mood. If I'm in a serious mood, probably South Park. But if I'm in like a fun little weird mood, then Family Guy.
A weird mood.
Well, not weird, but like I just need something like stupid humor. Not even stupid, but it's more just like random humor. Yeah, but there's like an episode in Family Guy where like Peter and Lois are fighting after like a failed like romantic getaway, and then the song So Far Away plays, and it's just like it's truly comedic magic. It's just so funny. But yeah, this is I've listened to this album so many. This is probably out of the 87 albums that I own now, this is probably one of my most listened to.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't expecting a lot from this album. Especially after I wasn't too impressed by the Stooges or A Tribe. But I love this album. Like, it was a really good pick by you. And I just see myself, like, playing this song when, like, I'm cleaning my house or, you know, just, like, dancing around. Like, it's just one of those, like, you hear the opening piano, you know, and it's just like, oh, here comes Carole King with a bop, you know?
Dun, 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 I feel the earth move under my skin. I'm gonna let Cameron finish this part.
I was kind of, I think it's a little surprising hat. It was 1971, and it's, you know, like, I thought that it was, especially from the look of the cover, I thought the cover looked a little bit more modern, like a little bit more modern.
Yeah. Carol Young, dude, she still looks great for for someone who's old as dirt, bro. She's still she's
shout out to Carole King.
Shout out to Carole King.
It was a good, but like I said, it was a very good album. I was not expecting a lot with this one. I kind of thought that it was going to be, no offense, but a chore to listen to. But
you want to do chores while listening.
But I want to do, yeah. It makes me want to be productive instead of, choking down my vegetables. You know, like it's a good album. I genuinely enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, I think from this point on, it's going to be too late to talk about that album. But we're about to go so far away into your next pick.
Yeah. Jumping back to the noise rap scene with my personal favorite noise rap group, Clipping, with, in my opinion, their sophomore album. Might not be their studio album, but I consider it their sophomore album, coming out in 2014. I think that if you want to get into like noise rap or the more abstract sound, I think Clipping is a little bit more easier to listen to than Death Grips, but they still seem to find that noise, you know, like that abstract sound that Death Grips does have. I absolutely love this group. I didn't find this group until last year. I think it was at the beginning of my summer semester, around June or July. And they became quickly my most listened to artist of 2019. And their self-titled album it has three of my most listened to songs of 2019, Body and Blood, Work, and Story 2, my personal favorite song on the album. I just love David's extremely descriptive lyrics. And the dude just keeps his rhythm no matter what it is. Whether it be just a random alarm, just an alarm that you wake up to, just beeping. He somehow finds a way to rap over it. There's a couple other really cool sounds he raps over in one of their most recent album, Nothing Is Safe, or Blood of the Fang. He raps over cars passing by, and I don't know if you've heard this song, Brandon, but you should definitely check it out. Like, it's a really cool sounding song about this dude like running away. Not to get too distracted. I keep going on these tangents about these artists because I absolutely love Outkast and Clipping. I think Outkast is going to be my most listened to artist of 2020. But Clipping, my most listened to artist of 2019. And like I said, I absolutely think David is one of the best lyricists. Maybe not best rapper. He's one of the least known rappers. I think he's more known by his part in Hamilton. He plays Hamilton. And he's just very, very talented and very creative and extremely descriptive. I know what your argument's about to be. You're going to say that this isn't their sophomore album because they had an EP. It wasn't a studio album. But I consider Mid-City their first album because they have story on it. Story 1. And for those that don't know, in Clipping's major releases, they always have a story, a song titled Story, and then it'll be the number of whichever story it is. And the reason I consider Mid-City their first album, because they have an EP. It's called Wriggle, and they don't have a story on that, so I don't consider it on the same level. I don't know if that's a good argument or not, but I do consider this their sophomore album because of Story 2, believe it or not.
You know what? I'm tired of the fight. Billy, I'm not going to have you clean your room. I don't care. I'm over it. I'm over the argument. Fine, whatever. You make a compelling argument. That's not how I work, but we're done making the argument. But for people like for the psychologists out in the world, understand that when you get 2 hours of sleep at night, you might go on Tangentville. And that's okay. You've had some very enlightening, insightful things to say. But we're just trying to appease the psychologists and go on long tangents. It's just due to a little bit of a lack of sleep, and that's okay. Clipping, though, not my favorite sound. It's cool and unique, but after a while, it gets a little bit old and outdated.
I think that is total baloney. Like, I do not see how you can say his sound gets old, because he literally changes the sound. Like, the two other gentlemen that create the beats, they totally throw anything they can at David, and somehow David finds a way to rap over it.
You know, David's cool, and Hamilton's cool, but not... Honestly, it just might be David Diggs. I mean, kind of the same with Hamilton. They both have the vibe. I'll say it. They sound cool at first, and it's really unique, but it gets old.
I have to disagree with you, and we're gonna have to fight about that in a later episode, because I will fight and defend David and Clipping to the grave.
Another album that I'm gonna take to the grave is my favorite. Led Zeppelin 2. That's my number one pick. 1969 from who else but Weezer. Led Zeppelin, no. Like, obviously, as I said in our last podcast, which may I remind you again, that if you've not listened to, go and listen to it, because Led Zeppelin 1 did make that one. It was very high on that list as well.
Or it may not have. You won't know unless you watch it.
Exactly.
Or listen to it, sorry.
Exactly. But the Led Zeppelin has this Fab Four type of style to it, but this album specifically is owned by Jimmy Page and John Bonham. Like, they cemented their legacies onto whatever Greek mountain they're on, or whatever their title would be. Whole Lot of Love, Killer Introduction, What Is and What Should Never Be, amazing song. Heartbreaker and Living Loving May, basically those two, like when you listen to them on like YouTube, they're together, so that's why I kind of put those together. And kind of the same with Ramble On and Moby Dick, just immaculate. I'm done talking. Moral of the story, the album is straight Fuego sauce. Actually, I will say one more thing though, because that last part was just a lie. Did you know that this won the Grammy Award for Best Packaging? Did you know that, Cameron?
No, I really don't like the Grammys. I think that they're pretty dumb.
What? The Grammys being dumb and a joke? No, when I found out that Led Zeppelin didn't, or when they like won the Grammy Award for Best Packaging, I was just kind of surprised that like they also didn't win for Best Use of a Toaster in a Song, or the Best Artist Who Broke Through to a Teen Audience Going to Their Adult and Grandpa Stages in Life.
Well, why does it got to be grandpas? Why can't it be grandmas and grandpas?
You're so right. It's 2020. I
have to stay woke.
I have to.
That's why you don't like Clipping or Death Grips.
Yeah, because I like Led Zeppelin too much.
Stuck in the past, old man.
Dude.
Where have I heard that argument before?
Yeah, I think Well, we do hear there is an amazing band that does kind of sound a lot like Led Zeppelin in the modern day context, and that is Greta Van Fleet.
And we do not like Greta Van Fleet
I
here.
I don't like Greta Van Fleet at all.
I don't either. I said this in our previous episode. I was personally turned off to Led Zeppelin because of the sole reason of how much Whole Lotta Love is played. I like Stairway to Heaven, but I think Whole Lotta Love is overplayed, in my opinion. I think it's one of their songs that really turned me off from listening to this album and from listening to him as an artist. But when, like I said, you kind of rekindled that fire for Led Zeppelin for me. I think it's a little too late for me, just because, as I've stated, I'm not the biggest rock fan right now. I'm a little burnt out on the genre as a whole, but I definitely do have a new appreciation for Led Zeppelin as an artist. And this album is totally kick-ass once you get past Whole Lotta Love, which I do not like. Ramble On is also kind of up there. It's not as bad, but I also think Ramble On is a little overplayed.
Well, I guess if we're going to ramble on, why don't we ramble on to your number one pick, my dude?
All right. When we want to talk about albums that defined a decade, I think that my number one pick defined the 2000s. Maybe not the album, but I think that it is one of the albums. I'm talking about Demon Days by Gorillaz. I had stated before that Gorillaz is one of my favorite artists of all time, and I still stand by that. Demon Days is... When I talk about Gorillaz, I do not even consider Demon Days in the conversation when we're talking about favorite Gorillaz albums, because I think that Demon Days is so obvious of a pick. You know, I think a lot of other cool, edgy Gorillaz fans are going to say Plastic Beach, but I think Demon Days is their best album. And that might be a normie pick because of how easy it is to listen to. But I really like my music to have abstract sounds, and this album has some really unique sounding songs, like Are We the Last Living Souls, Oh Green World, Kids See Guns, which is probably my favorite song on the album, Feel Good Inc. Obviously, I think Feel Good Inc. could be considered the song of the 2000s, one of them at least. Maybe not as strong of a pick as Smells Like Teen Spirit for the 90s, but I think Feel Good Inc. is, you could argue, is the song of the 2000s.
Whoa. Did we not... Did you forget about a little song called Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy? or that one song by Panic at the Disco?
Well, you see, the thing about those songs is, yes, a lot of people like it, but I think that those songs stick to their genres, where Feel Good Inc. could be considered a rock song or a hip-hop song. You know, it has a little bit of everything, and I think that's the appeal of Gorillaz, is that, you know, they're not really defined to a genre. They really test, Damon Albarn really tests a lot of different genres with Gorillaz. They even have like a song about yodeling, and I don't know if you've listened to the Fall, but there's a song about yodeling, because Gorillaz is awesome, and there's nothing that they won't touch.
Yeah. No, I think the Feel Good Inc. being one of the songs of the 2000s, that's something I can live with that.
Okay.
Just a heads up. Fall Out, or Sugar We're Going Down is not even remotely close. It's something I say to joke. I kid.
I mean, I think people could say that is like the song of 2000s.
No,
I think. I think people would argue that.
Maybe.
I don't say I agree with them, but I think that there's a bunch of angsty, now adults that would say that those were their
still angsty
song. It's still angsty.
Still found on your YouTube comments. No. So picture this: you're playing your PS2, you're playing like Madden or or Star Wars Battlefront. You know, you're just having the time of your life, and you know what? It's 2005, 2006, maybe 2007. But Demon Days, bro, that's something I bopped from since I was 5. And if you do the math, I was born in 2000, so I would have been 5.
This album came out almost 2 weeks before my birthday, too.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know that. But no, it is a very slapping album. It's like eating street tacos when you're hungry. You're just like, dang, this slaps. And Gorillaz, they're basically the Sgt. Pepper band of the 2000s, and as I said, one of the staples. Like get two pieces of paper together and just staple them. Staples of my young childhood.
Yeah, yeah. I love Gorillaz. I love what they were trying to do, especially like being like the cartoon band where you didn't really know what they looked like. I thought that they were really fighting the envelope and pushing the current.
Yes, sir. Well, everyone, we thank you for listening to our episodes where we talked about the 2 debates of the prior 2 weeks, or the sophomore albums, however you want to view this list. But again, we thank you, and just let us know how you feel about the video on our comments or DM us. And thank you for listening, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.